Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
The #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with contentatScale.ai.
Good morning. How many of you traveling today? Nobody? Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna go on another journey now. So we're gonna take the train and we're gonna see a friend of ours who lives a couple of hours away. A friend of ours who lives a couple of hours away. Did I? Yeah, I think I forgot my words, but anyway, we're gonna see a friend, okay? And we're gonna take the train. So you managed to score a window seat, which is amazing. And then you manage to get coffee, which tastes great. The landscape is great because it's a glorious day, pretty much like today. And everything could be perfect if it wasn't for this annoying neighbor who keeps on talking very loudly on the phone. So anyway, you get a destination on time, and you meet your friend who's already waiting for you. They hug you, and they ask you, so, how was your journey? What are you most likely to report on? Because are you gonna talk about the coffee, the landscape, or are you gonna mention the annoying neighbor? Because if you're like me, you're definitely gonna mention the neighbor. And that's not because we're particularly pessimistic or negative people. It's because as humans, we develop quite early on this over-attention to negative things as compared to positive ones that have the same emotional load. And this affects a number of areas in our life. It affects the way that we process the world around us, that we process information, and we also retrieve information. And it goes up to influence decision-making as well. So I was scrolling through LinkedIn one time, and it was shortly after I gave another talk on a number of biases, and negativity biases being one of these. And I saw this popping up, which was, did you know that the human brain is simply not capable of seeing the negative? It cannot physically comprehend it. The neuroscientist in me obviously got a bit triggered. So it's not true. We have functional asymmetries in our brain. Like, we react different to negative stimuli as compared to neutral and positive ones. And that's been shown by neuroimaging, for example. We got different areas of activation, of heightened activation for negative stimuli in these areas that are more involved in the processing of emotional event, like the PGACC. And we show larger late positive potential amplitudes, which is a measure of stimulus significance for negativity rather than positive stimuli. So there's a number of studies that actually confirm that the brain is more than capable of seeing negative. And also, this shows at the behavioral level from a very, very early age. So this kind of rules out the fact that we might have learned this as a response to threat. However, it did, like, one of the things that try to explain the origin of bias is that it came up because it was an adaptive response to threat, and it was helpful for our own species survival. Now we're not running away from lions anymore, but except if it's like the keyboard lions, but we still actually display this negative in different areas of our life, including our online behavior, from the very first touch points until the very last. So there's been studies that have shown many times how we have higher CTRs, for example, for negative headlines as compared to positive ones. And this goes on to affect, a number of areas in media. The media knows that. The media knows that they need our attention, and that's the most precious commodity. So they exploit this bias, and we respond to it. And the clicker doesn't work. Okay. So, and yeah, this is actually not the last version of my slides, but that's okay. We're going to fly through it. So yeah, the media just knows it, and they exploit the bias. And this affects also the other areas of the journey, because if you land onto a website, well, this is much of a curveball. Okay, I gave you a bit of a preview there. But if you get to a website, you navigate through it, and you get to a blocker, then obviously that's going to affect your journey more than the positive that you encountered that far. So you're going to remember that bad portion more than the positive. And something like that, something frustrating like that, is part of the reason why 60%, it's part of the 60% of the reasons why people abandon at the checkout level the website, when they spend already so much energy going through the website and the offers and so on. So this goes to affect even post-transaction. If you think about it, if you go into a restaurant and you have a great experience, you're going to say, oh, I'm going to leave a review. But probably you're going to procrastinate it and never do it. However, on the other hand, if you have a negative experience, you're more likely to report that too, and straight away. So we've seen that these, like we've got this hardwire for negativity, and that can spare us normally from some unpleasant scenarios. But when it's a non-threatening scenario, then it can actually become maladaptive, because this over-attention, systematic over-attention to the negative, can become pessimism. And again, many areas of our lives are implied because it's got implication on self-perception, performance, and even health. There's this story by Kirsty Hulse. She's a great speaker, great trainer. So she was giving this training, and there was this guy at the back of the room that was sitting with arms crossed. It looked very serious. And she got focused on these guys so much that she got so distracted. And she even went to speak to him and was like, look, can I do anything different in my next trainings? And he said that he actually couldn't see that far. So that was the only reason why he was looking so serious. But that's the thing. When something is ambiguous, when we don't have enough information to process something, we just tend to go for the negative process. So in the professional life, this has got many implications. And I try to understand it myself with first-party data, so with first-hand data. I ran a questionnaire in August. It had 124 participants. Thanks to all of you who participated. I know that a few of you are in the room. This questionnaire was aimed at measuring positive and negative feelings in the workplace. So it was an even split of statements, and people were agreeing or disagreeing with these statements. I came to this study with a number of hypotheses, and 3 of them were falsified, actually. 1 wasn't. So the first myth that was falsified was that no news is good news. We hear that a lot. Except when there's context ambiguity, when there's ambiguity of any kind, we've seen that we actually tend to perceive it as negative. That's, for example, when we don't have feedback at all. So when we only have feedback when something goes wrong. So if there's a lack of feedback, we tend to anticipate it's going to be wrong. The same goes for context. If I do a dance, do you reckon it's going to? OK. Context ambiguity, same thing. When somebody puts a meeting in our calendar, no context whatsoever, just check in. We're going to think that it's something that we did wrong. Career ambiguity, if there's no clear goal in our development plan, we're going to be worried that it's going to be a negative path for us. The second thing that I was trying to understand, and I thought I was going to find, was that the more confident you are, the less susceptible you are to negativity bias. However, more than half of the participants actually ruminate on the perceived failures of work, which is a measure of how negative they feel. It's a measure of a negative feeling at work. But there's no correlation on the perceived capability. They know that they're good at their job. And not only that, but they also have healthy ways to face challenges. They report that they take on feedback as an opportunity to grow. They also say that they see these challenges as temporary hurdles, and so much. So there's no real correlation. The third thing was that the most senior you are, the less you're going to be susceptible to negativity bias again. And that's also because it's supported by neuroscience. Neuroscience says that the more senior in terms of like age you are, the less asymmetries functionally you show. However, in this context, it's senior as in like professional seniority. And the C-level people were the ones that had the most negative scores. So that's really important to see, because they're the ones probably who have a bit more pressure. And I was surprised by that. And then I was hypothesizing that I was going to find a gender imbalance in experienced negativity. And for once, I was right. Males doing great. Like these was, the negative scores, everyone was doing like negative. The males were up. So yeah, well done, keep it up. So organizations should care about the negativity bias because this affects a number of areas again. And it affects the way that we, that we pick up information. And if there's a disgruntled employee, they're gonna kind of affect the entire mood. A pessimistic organization is not set up for success. And there's, so Marty Seligman ran a study in '86 and for the entire kind of length of his career, where he tried to explain or tried to predict the performance of two teams. And that was based solely on the explanatory style. The explanatory style is the way that we explain what happens to us. And he predicted that in this National League, it wouldn't be the favorite team or the most skilled team to win, but it would be the most optimistic, the one that had the most optimistic scores. And he was right, and he could replicate it across a number of areas, even in political elections. And also, organizations should care because negative thoughts create a resistance to change, which we don't want when we want to be flexible to work in an organization that works. And impair decision making. If you want to be a leader, you need to be on it with decision making. So we cannot afford to have decision paralysis. We've seen before that actually this slide came later, so guys, I'm running on a journey here. We're gonna come back to it, I promise, otherwise my flow is gonna go out the window. But organizations can actually do something to prevent this. They can minimize ambiguity and foster transparency at the company level. So say what's going on in the company. Don't, pretend that everything's fine, even if it's not. In the interview, during the interview, we come so much to something that's, we come so often to the interview with the negative priming, which is the slide that was going to go after this. But we are trying to catch the candidate in a fallacy, and we're trying to catch them in what they can't do as compared to our list of desired capabilities, rather than what they could add. And we've seen before that negative priming is actually quite hard to overcome. So in my questionnaire, I switched the order of the question at some point. I had, in the first half of the sample, the order of the questions was randomized. So people could either see the negative or the positive statement first. However, at half the sample, I switched the order and I put all the negative statement first. And I was interested in seeing if the negative priming, in this sense, when we're more exposed to the negative, was going to affect the positive scores. And it did. Not by much, not significant in this case, but there's a trend that shows so. And it's so important because whenever you're recruiting, if you come in to the interview with a negative impression or a negative mood, that's going to affect the rest of the journey. It's so much harder to overcome. So you can also modify the language and encourage your team to do so. So you can use literally different words. You can use opportunity instead of issue, solution instead of problems. Anna Lewis yesterday was here at MeasureFest and gave a beautiful talk on reframing your language, and I really strongly suggest that you go check it out. Celebrate wins regularly. Shout out to the women in tech SEO because they provide a space to do so, even for those that do not have a network. This is for everyone, and it's so important because in the questionnaire, what came up is that freelancers are the ones that have the most negative scores. So it's important to provide a space where they can celebrate wins, whether they're professional, personal, it doesn't matter, but provide that sort of network for them to celebrate. And enable a two-way feedback. This means not only feedback from the top down, but also bottom up. This means that when somebody is feeling like they have a voice, they feel in control. And if that is not happening, they will feel helpless otherwise. Provide mentorship opportunities because it provides a different perspective, and sometimes we just need to get out of our own framework. So work can do a number of things to flip the script. However, it's a massive part of our life, clearly, we know that. But as individuals, there's also other things that we can do to sort of to overcome the negative feelings that affect our daily life, because it's not all about work. So we got a superpower, which we might not even be aware of, but it's neuroplasticity. It's the, it's the effect of learning that can rewire our connection. And we know that we have like this sort of negativity in our veins and brains. However, we have the ability to change that. So the way that we can do that is by reframing our thoughts. There is this model called the ABC, the model, which aims at, again, like kind of deconstructing the challenges that we're facing. So let's have an example. So for example, a client call goes bad. And what you're going to think as a consequence is that, oh, I'm always so bad at client calls. Consequence for the rest of the day is like, I don't really want to do any client calls today. So yeah, this is like not great, but we need to make sure that we kind of detach the belief from our belief from the truth, because they're not equal. So the way that we can do it, again, is kind of exercising this ABC model on a daily, basically, on a daily. So we know that, like, the client call example was a bit of a lazy one that works for everyone, really. But now we're going to do it, like we're going to do this exercise together. So you're going to find an adverse or unpleasant situation that you lived, what you thought as a consequence of that, what your belief was, and what did you do or feel as a result. I'm going to go first. So as Greta mentioned, I'm a figure skater on the side. Not only, it's not a hobby, it's actually like, it used to be my daily profession. A few months ago, I had a massive opportunity to radically change my life. I was in the run for a world tour that would have taken me to visit many places for a year or so with my dream company. I was in fun around. However, as I'm standing here today, you can probably, understand that that didn't go well. And for me, that was my adverse situation. It was, it sucks. When you're rejected or when you're ghosted, it always sucks. What did I think as a result? I thought that I wasn't good enough. I thought, what's even the point? I'm too old anyway for this. And as a consequence, I stopped training. Like, I stopped showing up, which wasn't great because I felt even worse. So the way that we can cope with this sort of negative thoughts and negative beliefs is by distraction and disputation. Distraction is the easiest way out because you can just take some time to detach from that thought. Maybe, if that affects your day and you know that, you're going to schedule some time at 6 p.m. tonight to go through that feeling. And that kind of gives you some space to be free from that belief. But it doesn't really work in the long term. What really works is to exercise in disputation. Because at the end of the day, if somebody on the street, somebody who's drunk, you haven't met before, told you, you're not good enough for this, you're not good at anything, would you believe them? Probably not. But whenever it's us telling this to ourselves, we so believe it. We're so ingrained in the thought that we got to listen to this harshest judge, which is ourselves. So we need to learn to dispute our inner judge. And there's some different ways that we can do that. So taking my example, the way that I started disputing my own belief was I gather evidence. Was it true that I wasn't good enough? Clearly not, because I made it to final round. I was among 7 people in the country that did. Alternatives. What if I actually got it? Sure, I might have hated it, actually. What if, I'm placed with people that are half my age and I don't actually enjoy it because I'm a homebody? And implications. What did that belief mean for my daily life? It meant that I stopped training, but it also meant many other things. I stopped paying attention to everything else around me. And my career was flying at the time. I got a promotion. I opened my own consultancy. I got to talk on the main stage of BrightonSEO, which was a dream come true. And my dad got a Pomeranian, which was the main highlight, to be honest. But I couldn't appreciate any of those. I wasn't paying attention. And those opportunities and those moments are not coming back. I'm not going to get to experience them again. So it was not helpful. And usefulness. Did that belief serve me right? No, it didn't, clearly. Because I stopped, even if I wanted to get better, then I stopped doing what I was supposed to do. So kind of getting through all of these exercise gives you more control, makes you feel like you have some power because you're empowered not only to change your thoughts, but your actions. And that leads you to energization, which is like when you feel like, you can actually change the situation. However, we've seen how we can overcome the negative feelings, but let's not forget that we develop these feelings for a reason. So I'm not here to tell you to do the lucky girl syndrome and to put, and to say that everything's right, because no, sometimes things are not right. Things go wrong sometimes in the life. And we're not deciding to ignore the negative. We're deciding to make something about it, to provide healthy ways to respond to challenges. So there's actually situations where you don't want to apply learned optimism, which was what we talked about, and that's when the cost of failure is high. So, for example, an illness is involved, or a big financial loss is one of the risks, and also when you're advising somebody else on any of the above. And our time's over. Literally, I see the 0 there, but I want to leave you on something. We've seen that the way that we talk about what happens to us shapes the way that we experience those challenges and the way that we respond to them. So whenever we tell this story, like we're the only ones that can tell our story, and we're also the most important listeners of it. So whenever you tell your story and what happens to you, make sure that you make it a good one. Thank you. These are my socials.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.